The last several months, we've been going through a series in the Gospel of John, if you've been with us. We broke it up into almost like two different series. Our senior pastor, Shane, has been looking at the last words or some of the last hours of Jesus' life leading up to the cross. So, his Last Supper, his washing the feet, his evening with the disciples in the upper room, his prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane, that is what Shane has been going through, just showing this immense passion of Jesus right before his death on the cross. And then myself and the rest of the teaching team, we've been going through the first part of the Gospel of John and looking at Jesus's ministry and his miracles, interactions with people, the people who loved him, the people that hated him, and all the things that led up to it. And this week is our last week in the Gospel of John. So I'm going to do my best to try to wrap all of this up, if that's possible. We have a lot. There's a lot. It's going to be a fun morning. If you're kind of nerdy and geeky in any way with the Bible or culture or history, you might enjoy today a little bit more. If you're not, hopefully you still enjoy, but I can't make any guarantees there. You're going to get a whole lot of weird geeky stuff today. But we're going to have a fun morning. We're going to try to do a lot. We're going to try to cover a lot. There's a whole bullet point list of it. We're going to start with how to tell a story. We're going to talk about that, the art of storytelling. We're going to talk about the infinite and the formless. We're going to talk a little bit about biblical intentionality. We're going to talk about the ancient Jewish consciousness and how did they think differently? How do we think? Which then we'll talk about numerology and numbers and symbols. And this is where we start to make our real decline into the abyss of nerdiness and geekiness. And so buckle up for that one. So we'll talk about the number 7. Why not? 7, which will make us talk about creation and then Sabbath. And then somehow, according to the biblical authors, number 7 has a lot to do with human existence. We'll talk about good old Laz. He'll show up for a moment. Good old Lazarus, he'll be there. And so then we'll talk about death and loss and mourning. We'll talk about the difference between being dead and being really dead. There's a difference for the biblical authors. We'll talk about that one time Jesus cried. And then we'll talk about the resurrection and completion, which will then lead us to talk about the number 8. And death and loss and mourning again, and then resurrection again. And then we're going to ask who's the new gardener, which will make us ask what's a new creation and a new week and new beginnings. And then if time allows, we'll end right on hope. We're going to look at 2 of Jesus's final public miracles. Miracle number 7 and miracle number 8. And what they have to do with us. And what did they actually accomplish? And what was the meaning of all of it? And when I say I hope that we land on a sense of hope, I really mean that. You know, I've been in this season of life, this kind of extended period of time where I don't know about you. I think some of you can relate to this. Maybe many of you can't. I grew up in this world. I grew up in the churches. I grew up going to church and attending church and being a leader in church and then Bible school and seminary and doing ministry, and this has been my world, and reading theology and discussing the theology and debating theology and reading and studying and doing all the deep dives, and in some ways recently what's really been pulling on my heart is more like all that's good, but how does it always fit into just my life here? Like, how does that translate into human life? I can read this story from the Bible. Can you relate? I can read the story from the Bible, but then just at the end, just be like, okay, that was a good story, but like, I'm just trying to be a good dude in 2022. I'm just trying to be a halfway decent husband, and I feel like I keep failing at that. I'm trying to be a halfway decent father, and I'm afraid I'm going to mess up my kids. Or I'm just trying to be a good wife. I'm just trying to be a good mother. I'm trying to be a good employee. I'm just trying to do a decent human experience here, and I don't always see the connection with what that story has to do with my life. Does anyone ever relate to that? If not, then you have so much more insight into the Bible than sometimes I have. And so I thought about that a lot as I was looking at John chapter 11. We're going to look at John chapter 11, and then we're going to look at like John chapter 19 and 20. These 2 miracles that are very, very similar. Miracle number 7, miracle number 8. Very, very similar. And yet, by the end of this, my hope is that we walk away with a new sense of hope. And maybe you are in a place, the nice thing about a church of our size is that there's often just, It's not that hard to say. I'm sure someone is in this place, in this place of life. And maybe you've had a dream. Let's start there as an example. Maybe you've had a dream about what you wanted your life to be like, what you thought your life was going to be like, what you thought it was going to look like, how it was going to pan out. And maybe you've been on this trajectory to make that life plan happen. And there's a 5-year plan and a 10-year plan, and you had a list and a bullet point. And maybe you had one of those vision boards, and everything was cut out from magazines. Like, you knew what you wanted to do. And so maybe you did the college thing, and you chose the career path, and you did all the right interns, you did all the right things. And then you knew, okay, after college, I'm going to get X and Y job, or I'm going to live in X and Y place, and I'm going to meet my soulmate, and we're just going to come together, and it's going to be beautiful, and we're going to have the picture perfect marriage, and we're going to do our own thing just as a married couple for a certain amount of time, and then we're going to have kids. And as soon as we want to try to have kids, we'll immediately have kids, right? It'll just happen right away. And when it happens right away, everything will be beautiful and perfect, and they'll come out as the numbers that we want, as we want them to come out, and they'll come out the genders that we want, just as we want them to come out, and they'll be perfectly behaved, and we'll have this beautiful little, and that will be my life, and that's my plan. And now you're maybe like 5 years in, 10 years in, 40 years in, and you're like, it doesn't look anything like that vision board. This isn't how I thought this was going to go. And maybe there's that dream that's got like 1 foot in the grave already. Yeah. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe a marriage. Maybe you're sitting on a marriage that feels like it's got 1 foot in the grave. And it seems dark, and it kind of seems dead, and it kind of seems like there's a lot of hope missing from it. Maybe we've just accepted that. Like ships in the night, we go through our days, we go through our life, we work, take care of the kids, watch some TV, go to bed, get up, go to work, take care of the kids, watch some TV, go to bed. We don't communicate. Anytime we try to talk, it's like fighting, so what's the difference anymore? Let's not do that. Yeah, maybe there's a marriage that's hurting in here. Maybe there's a family that's hurting, a parent-child dynamic that's hurting. The point of it is this, is that the title of this message is Something New. And if I could have one prayer for all of us walking out of this message, is that we could truly believe that there's a God that can bring something new out of something old, that can bring hope out of hopelessness, life out of death, light out of darkness, that he is able to change even the seasons of our lives into something new. And even if something seems dead, it doesn't mean that everything is over. Yeah. So if you can agree with any of that, if you can hold on to any of that, or you can relate to it, I want you to hold on to that area of your life, that thing in your life as we go through this. As we go through all these weird roller coasters of geekdom, I want you to hold on to that thing, and I think we'll land in a place that hopefully speaks hope into those situations. Let's pray. God, I thank you for who you are. I thank you for your word, and I thank you for the series that we've been able to go through in the Gospel of John. And I just pray that, Holy Spirit, that you would just speak. Speak a better message than I can speak. Tell a better story than I can tell. Give better insight than I can give. That you would just speak to the hearts and souls of the people here. Whether we're in a soft, tender, sensitive, hurting place, or we're in kind of a hard, put up walls, push people away place in our hearts, somewhere in between, or just numb. Yeah, that you would speak to us a right now word, what we need to hear. That you would take something and make it new. In your name, amen. One of my favorite teachers and speakers said this in one of his messages: where and how you begin the story and where and how you end the story shape and determine what story you're telling. Might sound obvious, but I'm going to read it again. Where and how you begin the story and where and how you end the story shape and determine what story you're telling. In other words, the way that the story starts and the way that the story ends is going to have a very significant flow about what you're trying to communicate. So let's put that into the context as we're finishing the Gospel of John. Let's try to put that, let's experiment with that, put that to the test with how the Gospel of John starts and how the Gospel of John ends. If you remember, several months ago, I had the honor of starting this series, and it begins this way. In the beginning was the Word. It's the Logos, the inspiration, the limitless, infinite, formless, eternal, the expression of God's divine imagination, the very source of everything that lives in this natural world. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. And through this thing, all things were made, and without him, nothing was made that has been made. It owes everything to him as their creator. In him was life, and that life was the light of all of mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. What a beginning to a story. How you begin a story and how you end a story has a great impact on what story you're telling, and that is how John started the story about his best friend named Jesus. In the beginning was God, and he had no form. But then he took on flesh and became this man named Jesus. And that's the story I want to tell you about in this book. If we fast forward all the way to the end of the Gospel of John, John chapter 21, verse 25, this is how John signs off the book. After everything is said and done, Jesus' ministry, Jesus' miracles, Jesus' teachings, Jesus' death and resurrection, after everything, this is how he signs it off. He says, Jesus did many other things as well. If every one of them were written down, well, I suppose that even the whole world would not have room for the books that would be written. What a great way to end a story. In the beginning was the limitless, infinite, formless, eternal source of all beings. He became human and lived among us, and I called him friend, and I got to see everything that he did. But if I tried to tell you everything that he did, I would not have enough books, and there wouldn't even be enough room in the world for the books to write everything down. And what that says to me, if we're going to analyze this, what that says to me is that what John did choose to write down, he did with a great sense of intentionality. It's like if someone were to ask you a question, hey, tell me about your spouse, tell me about your job, tell me about your college years, and your response is, oh man, I could go on forever. Well, don't. What are you trying to say? Well, there is so much I could say, but instead I'll just tell you this. Tell me about your spouse. Oh, I could go on forever about my spouse. Hopefully good things. I could go on forever, but instead, let me just tell you this about Emily, my wife. What I'm saying is there's so much I can tell you, but I'm just going to limit it to these few things, and I'm going to be very intentional about what I tell you about her. There's a good chance John isn't just sitting here writing every single thing down that Jesus does. Instead, he's a young Jewish man in a young Jewish world, writing down very intentionally and specifically the things that he writes down. I could go on forever about Jesus. This is what I want you to know about him. And with that perspective, I think it's unique. We think of Jesus' life and we think he was just doing miracles right and left just all the time. He's just speaking miracles, doing miracles. Why didn't we hear about all those? In the Gospel of John, 21 chapters long, he mentions 7 public miracles of Jesus before his death and resurrection. Just 7. That doesn't seem like a very high number, right? They're called the 7 signs of John. These 7 miracles that Jesus does in a public setting for other people to see. Just to go through these, we went through them over the last several months, but in John chapter 2, he turns the water into wine at a wedding. In John chapter 4, he heals an official's son. In John chapter 5, he heals the man that was paralyzed laying on the side of the pool of Bethesda. In John chapter 6, he feeds the 5,000, and then later on in John chapter 6, he walks on water. And in John chapter 9, he heals the man that was born blind. First 6 miracles of Jesus. I want to try to make an argument that John is being very specific with what he's writing down and how he's doing it. Because then he adds one more, a 7th miracle. in John chapter 11, the raising of Lazarus from the dead. Now, in the ancient Jewish consciousness, there's an old Jewish proverb that says, for a good practicing Jewish individual, something always means something else. Something always means something else. In other words, light, when the word light happens in the Bible in the Old Testament, we're not just talking about a light bulb. And we're not even just talking about the sun or some visible light. Light can mean the sun, but light can also mean truth. Light can mean illumination. It can mean revelation. It can mean having some sort of understanding of something. Light can mean something else. Darkness doesn't just mean darkness. Sometimes darkness means hopelessness. It means a lack of order. It means chaos. Something always means something else. And this is specifically true in the Jewish consciousness with numbers and symbols. Are you sensing the deep dive that we're going on right now? You're like, John, can't you just tell a story or something? I like it better when you just tell stories. And numbers and symbols meant a lot in the Jewish consciousness. If you look at the Old Testament, numbers meant things. Numbers mean things. To give you a specific example, the number 7. The number 7 in the Jewish consciousness actually meant completion. It wasn't just a number, it stood for, it was a symbol for completion. Something is completed. The number 7, actually in the Old Testament, the number 7 throughout the Bible happens over 700 times. The number 7 is mentioned throughout the Bible, many of them for a specific reason. And so for a young Jewish individual, for a Jewish audience, 7 for them has always meant completion. And they get that from creation. How many days were in that first creative week? 7 days. On the 7th day, it was called the Sabbath because it completed the day of work. It was an act of completion. So for 6 days, God creates the world, and on the 7th day, he rests. It's still very much a part of the creation week, but he's creating something new. Now, on your days, if you look at a calendar, there is no 8th day of the week, correct? There's 7 days. Day 8 is just the first day of a brand new week, and I'll get back to that in a second. But in the Jewish consciousness, they think 7, they think creation, they think Sabbath. Taking a step further, in the Old Testament, there was a law that every 7th year, you were not supposed to do any sort of tilling or growing. You were supposed to let the land just lay fallow. You're not supposed to grow anything, seed anything, cultivate anything. It was called the Sabbath year. The 7th day was a day of rest. The 7th year was a year of rest. Oh, they didn't stop there, by the way. Every 7 sets of 7, this is in the Bible, by the way. I'm not just really weird. Every 7 set of 7, so after the 49th year was called the year of Jubilee. It was meant to be an entire year off where all slaves were freed. Land ownership was supposed to be revoked. It was like a giant reset button. Every 49th to 50th year, every 7 sets of 7. And it goes on. To defeat Jericho, what do? They march around Jericho how many times? That's weird. How many times on the last day? Right? It meant completion. Something is being finished. Something is ending and something new is about to begin. 7 meant something in the Jewish ancient consciousness. And so John writes 7 signs of Jesus. And the last one is Lazarus coming back from the dead. There is something about this miracle that the audience needs to know. There's something about this miracle we need to know. And there was something about this miracle that was going to set the stage for Jesus doing something new in the world around him. Going to John chapter 11. Now, a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord's feet and wiped it with her hair. And so these sisters, Mary and Martha, sent word to Jesus, Lord, the one that you love is sick. Lord, your friend is sick. It's not looking good. Now, these people had supported him, had been friends of him throughout the majority of his ministry probably. He would crash at their house. In fact, during his Passion Week, the week of his death, most every night he goes back to Bethany to stay with them. These were his friends. So Mary and Martha send word to Jesus, hey, Lazarus is sick. It's not looking good. We've seen all the other miracles we've done. We've seen how you come through for other people. Hold on to this for a second. We've seen how you come through for other people. We see how you've brought healing for other people. Now come on. Lazarus is sick. When he heard this, Jesus said, this sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it. Now, Jesus loved Martha and loved her sister, and he loved Lazarus. And so when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days. He just stayed for 2 more days. He could have stayed longer. He just stayed for 2 more days. And then he said this to his disciples, we have to go back to Judea. We got to go back. Now, here's their response, and I'll explain why this seems like a problem. But Rabbi, they said, a short while ago, the Jews there tried to stone you. Yet you want to go back. Yeah, so his friend is sick. He only stays 2 more days where he is, and then he says, we got to go back there. And his disciples are like, yeah, time out. Not a good plan. How many times do you think you can get away from these people? How many times do you think you can escape? How many times do you keep flirting with this death idea? How many times are we going to keep doing this? Back there is bad. Let's just keep going. See, every time Jesus does another miracle, if you've been with us, if you haven't, please go back and you can watch all the messages from the John series. Every time Jesus does a miracle, he gains a positive popularity and he seems to gain a negative popularity. Every time he does it, more people are kind of like gathering to him, and yet there's also this stirring from within kind of the religious community that doesn't like what he's doing, and they want to get rid of him even if it means his death. And their capital, their headquarters for operations is in Judea, this region. I got to go back. If it means I never get out of there again, I got to go back. So verse 9, Jesus answered this. They're like, okay, they're trying to stone you there. We shouldn't go. And here's Jesus' beautiful response. Are there not 12 hours of daylight? Don't you love it when Jesus just answers in a way that doesn't make sense right away? You know? Hey, Jesus, we can't go back because don't you remember they tried to stone you, so you want to go back? Yeah, obviously, aren't there 12 hours of daylight? I mean, I guess, but I don't, what is that? What does that? Anyone who walks in the daytime will not stumble, for they see by this world's light. It's when a person walks at night that they stumble, for they have no light. And one of the things that he's saying here is, look, we still have time. It's not my time. It's not time for me to die yet. That's not time. So as long as it's still daylight, there's still work to be done. I got some work to do, and it's in Judea. I got to go. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter the danger. It doesn't matter the risk. I got to go. My buddy's got 1 foot in the grave. I got to go. After he had said this, he went back on to tell them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I'm going to go there to wake him up. His disciples replied, hopefully the same way any of us would reply. His disciples said, Lord, if he sleeps, he'll get better. Really? That's the reason we're going back? Like these dudes want to kill you and you just want to sleep, you just want to wake up your buddy that's taking a nap? Let him sleep. Give him some chicken noodle soup. It's good. Like he'll be fine. He'll get better. Right? They didn't know. Jesus has been speaking of his death. His disciples thought he meant natural sleep. And so Jesus tells them plainly, God help me. Me help me. Lazarus is dead. Hey, look, okay, fine. Look, he's not sleeping. He's actually dead. I was just trying to be nice, okay? Lazarus is dead. And for your sake, I'm glad I was not there so that you may believe. Now let us go. That's a weird thing to say, isn't it? Lazarus is dead. And for your sake, I'm glad that I wasn't there when he was dying. What? There is something about what Jesus is about to do with Lazarus that is vital for the disciples to see. There is something that they are going to witness that they have to see in order for the next miracle that they'll witness for them to understand. They're about to see Jesus do something that will come back to them in a few weeks. And so verse 16, then Thomas, also known as Didymus, said to the rest of the disciples, let us also go that we might die with him. Now, I said this in the first service. A part of me really appreciates when I'm studying the scriptures to find scholars like really divided on what something means. right? Sometimes it's really nice when everyone agrees and you're like, okay, that's just what it means. Check, good. But sometimes it gives me a little bit more grace to be myself as I'm reading these stories when they're divided. And what I mean by that is this. You can read that verse from Thomas, right? Let us also go that we might die with him, and be like, that is what? What are you saying? Some scholars translate this or interpret this as valor and integrity. This is Thomas saying, all right, if we must, we must. And if you are going to go die, then I shall die with you, right? It's like that sense, like, let us all go. You too, you're going to die. We're all going to go, let's all go die with him, right? That's what some scholars think. Other scholars read this and actually interpret it through like first century sarcastic language. It's not valor, it's sarcasm. So instead it's like Thomas being like, oh yeah, great idea. Let's all go. Maybe we can all die. So I'm just going to lay that before you, right? If you prefer to think of the disciples as valor and integrity, then you can interpret that way, and there are scholars who agree with you. If you read that as like sarcasm, like, oh yeah, sure, it's a great idea. Maybe we can all die. Let's all go. Cool. Got nothing better to do. There are scholars who agree with you. So there you go. Anyway, on his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now, Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem. And many Jews had come to Martha and Mary, who knew her, knew him, knew the family, to comfort them in the loss of their brother. And when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him. But Mary stayed at home. You know, there's a previous story about Jesus going to their house, right? And Mary and Martha are there. And Martha's busy. Martha's cleaning. Martha's distracted. Martha's doing a bunch of stuff. It's Mary who wants to sit at Jesus' feet. It's Mary who wants to be there. It's Mary who wants to learn from him. It's Mary who wants that relationship, that connection. I want to be a student of you. But now that Lazarus is dead, it's Martha who's running and Mary who stays at home. It said that he had been in the tomb for 4 days. Another little thing about the ancient Jewish consciousness is that they had this belief system that there's a difference between being dead and being really dead. Okay? After someone passes, there was this belief that their soul, their spirit, would kind of hover over their body for 3 days. Okay? As kind of like are we sure we're done? Is there any unfinished business? Is there anything that needs to go back? Okay? Do we need more time here? And so they had this belief that for up to 3 or more days, the spirit would hover over a body. And then past that time, it was dead. It would go, it's gone, spirit's gone, soul's gone. There is no natural way that that body is going to come back from the dead. So once you reach day 4, most people would look at that and be like, they're dead. They're really dead. There's no chance of them coming back. How many days has Lazarus been in the tomb? 4 days. He's dead. He's not coming back on his own. There is no natural cause in their ancient consciousness for him to come back into life. There is no likelihood that he's just going to be revived. And maybe it was kind of a lack of what we'd see as modern day, medicine or health or knowledge of that. Maybe someone would have like a really bad fever and they would go into a coma, and then 2 days later they'd come back and they'd be like, oh, he wasn't really dead. He was just kind of dead. And he wasn't really dead. The soul came back. But after 4 days, their understanding was, no, he's dead. It's done. We ran out of time. You could have come. You could have done something. You could have intervened. You could have been around. You could have come when we first said something rather than waiting a few days. But now he's really dead. So Martha says, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Now, she goes on to say a pretty positive thing in her belief. But I think she's being really raw and honest in that moment. Lord, we've seen you do it before. We've seen you do miracles before. We've seen you come through for other people before. We've heard stories about how you did all of these miraculous things. We have seen you intervene for the sake of someone else. But Lord, when it was us, you didn't show up. And when I slow down and I think of it that way, man, it's hard to not put that into our own lives sometimes. We're going through a difficult season. We go through a difficult patch in a marriage. You go through a difficult diagnosis. You go through a difficult financial situation, career situation, a dream situation. And we have our dream or our relationships or whatever it might be halfway in the grave. And there's a part of us that says, God, where are you? Where were you? Why didn't you show up? I come to that church every single week. I read that book every single day. I hear over and over again about how great you are and how miraculous you are and how you're able to do things and intervene and heal people. I hear it all the time, and yet when it seemed like it was me or it was my story or it was our story or when it hit close to home, you're not even there. I think there's a rawness in Martha to Jesus. You know, Lord, if you had just been here, he wouldn't have died. If you just come sooner. But I know even now that God will give you whatever you ask. So Jesus says to her, your brother will rise again. And Martha gives such a beautiful first century theological answer. I know he'll rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Oh, nice. Nice theology. I know he'll rise again in that day, but it's gone. I know theologically, I know what the books say, I know what the writings say, I know that day, way off in the future, I know that thing, that event, that resurrection, I know what resurrection means. Resurrection means that in that far off future time, when you decide that it's the right time, then everything will come together and everything will be good and beautiful, then he'll come to life. That's resurrection. And Jesus says, I think you don't understand resurrection. I know he'll rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection. You don't need to wait for some day for something old to become new. You don't need to wait for some day for something dead to come back to life. You don't need to wait for some day far off in the future for me to show up. I am the thing that you're waiting for, and I'm right here. He's about to do something that his disciples need to see. And as miracle number 7, he's about to bring completion to something from the beginning of time. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die. There is life in the midst of death. There is joy in the midst of pain. There is hope in the midst of hopelessness. There's light in the midst of darkness. They are not mutually exclusive. There can still be God doing something new in the midst of your situation that you feel can't change. Yeah. Whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this, Martha? Yes, Lord, she replied. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come into the world. After she said this, she leaves. She goes back home. She calls her sister Mary aside. The teacher's here, she said, and is asking for you. Mary's sitting in her home with some of these other folks from Jerusalem, her comforting her. They're all mourning together. When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and she went to him. Now, Jesus hadn't even entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. And when the Jews who had been with Mary in the house comforting her noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to mourn there. She's breaking. She needs someone. We got to follow her. We can't trust what she's going to do right now. She's not in the right place. She's very she's very upset. We need to follow her. So all of a sudden now this crowd is following after Mary. Mary is running to Jesus. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said the same raw statement as Martha. Lord, if you had just been here, my brother would not have died. If you just show up. If I could just know that you're there every once in a while, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Maybe this dream wouldn't be dying. Maybe this 5-year, 10-year plan wouldn't be done. Maybe this marriage wouldn't be where if you would have just shown up. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. I kind of like this picture of Jesus. We don't see it very often. It said that, throughout the gospel, it says he had compassion on the crowd, right? These are his friends. This is family. This is personal. This is close. And he sees his friends crying, and he hears that one of his good friends is dead, and he's mourning, like he's truly sad in the loss of it. Even though he's God in the flesh, he's mourning what they're going through. Isn't that fascinating? He's not detached from the loss and the mourning that they're experiencing. He is also experiencing the emotions of their situation. And so he asks, "Where have you laid him?" "Come and see, Lord," they replied. And that beautiful short verse of the Bible, the shortest verse, Jesus wept. He wept. He cried over his friend Lazarus. And then the Jews said, "See how he loved him? See how much he loved that guy. Man." But some of them were quick to say, "Well, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind have kept this man from dying?" God, couldn't you have come through in my situation like I heard you do so many other times? I mean, what's the point of it all? Why do you have me read this thing over and over again? Why do you have me go through these classes about prayer? Why do you have me go through these things about spiritual? Why do we even do it? Like, I've heard that you do this all the time for everyone else. We hear these testimonies of how everyone else is saved and healed, and I hear it all the time. But you couldn't have done it here? Why couldn't you have done it in my life? Why couldn't you have come through when I needed it? Verse 38, Jesus, once more, deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. Visualize that. There's a grave that's a tomb with a large stone in front of it. And he says, "Take away the stone." "But Lord," Martha said, the sister of the dead man, "by this time there is a bad odor. He's been in there for 4 days." That's a very practical statement. Let's not open that, dude. That's not going to be good news. We're trying to have a memorial service. We got cucumber salad. And they're like, "Don't open that. Okay? Don't." No. It's also kind of like please don't. We've already had to go through all the wrestling. We've already had to go through all the dying. We had to sit there and hold his hand while we kept trying to get you to come here. We've already let go. It's been 4 days. He's not coming back. His soul, his spirit, wherever it is, it's not here. It's not hovering anymore. It's done. He's not coming back. Please don't make me rehash that. Please don't make me face that. In my own way, and my own self-defense mechanisms, I've closed that door. I've put the stone in front of it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to hash it out. I don't want to go back to the painful past memories. I don't want to do that. Please don't make us open that tomb. Then Jesus said, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. The stone in front of the tomb is rolled away. Then Jesus looked up and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they might believe that you sent me." His prayer is specifically for other people to hear. "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. As I stand in front of this grave with a stone that's been rolled away, and I'm about to speak into death, I thank you that you hear me, and it is so important that they hear that. Because miracle 7 is happening and miracle 8 is yet to come. I'm standing in front of a grave with a dead man inside, and we've rolled the stone, and I'm about to speak into it, and I need them to hear." And when he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out. What is that moment like? I mean, come on. Was there an awkward stillness, silence? Like, oh, this is just painful. Don't. He is dead. It smells bad, you know? Was it an immediate reaction? Was everyone just kind of standing there and all of a sudden you start to hear like some like slight movement of cloth against stone and you're like, what is happening? And when he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out of the tomb where the stone was rolled away. He came out at the voice of God who spoke life into death, light into darkness, hope into hopelessness. Lazarus starts walking out. The dead man came out. His hands and feet were wrapped with strips of linen, and a cloth was around his face. And Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. My argument is that John has intentionality with how he's writing his book. Miracle number 7, the number for completion in their culture that's been used for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Miracle number 7 that he writes down is Jesus speaking into a tomb that the stone has been rolled away, and he calls forth life out of death, hope out of hopelessness, light out of darkness, and the dead come forward and they are set free to go. That's pretty good, huh? And it's their number for completion. Something has been completed this day. This wasn't just wine and water. This wasn't just paralysis into movement or blindness into sight. This was dead, really dead, dead without hope, brought back to life. This was something old and done that was now something new. And Jesus is putting the stamp of completion on this. John is putting a stamp of completion. If 7 is completion, this completes it. But I want you to understand this event for the next miracle that's coming. If there were 7 miracles in his public ministry, the 8th happens after his death. If the number 7 in the Jewish consciousness and kind of numbers and symbols meant completion, number 8 means something new. See, there aren't 8 days in the week, right? Day number 8 isn't day number 8 of the same week. It's a brand new cycle. It's a first day of something new. In the 1800s, there was a Jewish rabbi named Samson Raphael Hirsch who said that 8 is a number indicating that the condition of the previous period is entirely closed. And with the 8, a new beginning is made. Something was completed when he spoke life into Lazarus. And now we look at public miracle number 8. How we end our series in the book of John. In John chapter 19, verse 28, Jesus is hanging on the cross. He's already gone through the last words that Shane has brought us through. He's gone through the upper room, the Olivet discourse. He's gone through the prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane. He's gone through all of it, and now he has been whipped and beaten, and he's hanging on a cross. He is facing the completion and the creation of something new. Later, knowing that everything had now been what? Finished. And so that scripture would be what? Fulfilled. Jesus said, I'm thirsty. A jar of wine vinegar was there, and so they soaked a sponge in it, the sponge on a stalk of hyssop plant, and they lifted it up to Jesus' lips. And when he had received the drink, Jesus said, it is finished. Something is being completed in this moment. Something is finishing in this moment. Something is done in this moment. And with that, he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. Going through this story, it's a lot of verses to just engage in the story. Now, it was the day of preparation, the day before Sabbath, right? The next day was to be a special Sabbath day. Because the Jewish leaders did not want the bodies left on crosses during the Sabbath, they asked Pilate to have the legs broken and the bodies taken down. Seems brutal. Why would you break their legs? If you're unfamiliar, crucifixion, someone who died of crucifixion in the ancient Roman world actually died most often of suffocation. So your feet would either be put on a platform or nailed to a platform, and then your hands or wrists would either be tied or nailed to a crossbar, and gravity would do its work. So once they put that cross upright, all of your gravity just pulls your whole body down, pinching your diaphragm. If you want to breathe, you pull your upper body up against those nails in your wrist or hands, and you push your legs up against that platform. You take a breath, you hold it, and you go back down. And you hold that breath for as long as you possibly can, and then you pull yourself back up, let the breath out, get another breath, and go back down. Over and over and over again, you repeat that process. For some people, it was days, but they didn't want them up there for days. They wanted to expedite the dying process. So how do you do that? You break their legs. Now you can't push yourself up. All you can do is pull yourself with your upper body against a nail, take a breath, and go down. Soldiers therefore came and broke the legs of the first man who had been crucified with Jesus, and then those of the other. But when they came to Jesus and found that he was already dead, they didn't break his legs. Instead, one of the soldiers pierced Jesus' side with a spear, bringing a sudden flow of blood and water. The man who saw it has given testimony, and his testimony is true. He knows that he tells the truth, and he testifies so that you may also believe. Why? Maybe you grew up in a religious context. Maybe you grew up in some sort of traditional church. And maybe just the idea of church or Christianity or Jesus has been in your common language. Maybe sometimes you go on Christmas or Easter, but you never really understood what that thing was all about. It's odd, isn't it, to decorate our buildings with a cross? It's a symbol of death. It was vicious. Nowadays, people likened it to building a building and then putting an electric chair up on top as an ornament. It doesn't make sense. We don't have to look long and hard to look at our own lives, the world around us, and come to the conclusion that not everything is going perfectly. I don't always seem to get it right. Even though it's not even laid out how it's supposed to be, I still feel like I'm not getting it right. I know, so I go off on people. I treat other people unfairly. I know that there are things in my life, even though I can't quite explain how, I know that things that I've done are wrong. And so we get to that point where I'm trying to figure out if things that I've done are wrong, then how do I make them right? And so we try to fill in that gap. Maybe if I can just be better, it will offset the things that I've done, even though that never really works. If I commit a crime and I go and serve a sentence, it doesn't mean I never committed that crime. I still committed it, but there's a sentence I have to serve for it. Or sometimes we numb it because we don't know how to do it. It just seems like nothing in our life is giving us hope or joy or direction or meaning. I have no purpose in this thing. So what am I doing? And so I numb the feeling of nothing. I numb the feeling, or I try to find something to distract myself. If I can just work harder, make more money, do this, do that, indulge in this, if I can just do these things, it will numb the sense that I don't feel like my life has a purpose or direction, and I still can't get it all right. If you're new to this whole Christian thing, maybe you've just heard a story of, you're never going to be good enough, and hell and brimstone, and no one's ever filled in the gaps for you. The gaps are filled in this way. We were actually created in goodness, in beauty, in purpose. Somewhere along the way, we felt like we could do it better on our own. And over again, we mess it up. And that feeling that we have, that I just can't get it right, is a common universal feeling for many people. But how does it get made right? we have this justice system, this justice button within ourselves. It says, it seems like a lot of bad is happening. Is there anything that offsets that bad? The story of the cross, the story of Jesus, is actually that limitless, infinite, formless, eternal inspiration for everything that's ever been created became human in the form of Jesus. Lived the perfect life to show us how we could be better. And then willingly and humbly allowed himself to be killed as a sacrifice on your behalf. If there are justice scales, his blood outbalanced them. If there's a justice button, he pushed it with his own life. He laid himself down so that you could have purpose in life and direction and joy and hope again. Not that everything will be perfect, but that I have a place and I'm loved. And so as he's hanging on that cross, a spear goes into his side. And it fulfilled the scriptures, and not one of his bones will be broken. And as another scripture says, they will look on this, the one that they have pierced. Now later, Joseph of Arimathea asked Pilate, the Roman official, for the body of Jesus. Now Joseph was a disciple of Jesus, but only secretly, because he feared the Jewish leaders. And what would it mean if they found out that he was a follower of Jesus? And so with Pilate's permission, he came and took the body away. And he was accompanied by a man named Nicodemus, the one who earlier had visited Jesus at night. And Nicodemus brought a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 75 pounds. That's a whole lot of essential oils. And taking Jesus' body, the two of them wrapped it with spices in strips of linen. This was in accordance with Jewish burial customs. And at the place where Jesus was crucified, there was a garden. And in the garden, a new tomb in which no one had ever been laid, because it was a Jewish day of preparation. And since the tomb was nearby, they laid Jesus there, covered in linen strips with a cloth over his face. Does it sound familiar? It sounds a whole lot like the last thing that Jesus said was so important for his disciples to witness. You need to see what I'm about to do with Lazarus if the next thing is going to make any sense to you. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene, this is John chapter 20, we skipped ahead, went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance. Looking at a tomb and a grave with a stone that's now been rolled away. And so she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple. Now, most people think that's John talking about himself, okay? So rather than just saying like, he came to Peter and I mean, it just says, came to Peter and the other disciple. If there's any, you don't know who it is? The one that Jesus loved. That's how he just describes himself. Yeah, to Simon Peter, who he doesn't love, and the other disciple, the one that Jesus loved. And said, Mary Magdalene says, they have taken the Lord out of the tomb. He's not there. There's a tomb with a stone, but it's been rolled away, and the dead dude isn't in there. What's going on? What's happening? Have you guys ever heard of anything like this before? Yeah. And so Peter and the other disciple started for the tomb. They're running. Both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. We were both running, but I beat him. The other disciple who outran Peter, the one that Jesus really loves, he bent over and he looked in. He looked into that tomb. I wonder if there's flashbacks happening. He didn't go in, he just peers in. I'm not sure I want to go in there. I'm not sure I want to face this. I saw him die, but there's a tomb. And there was a stone, but that stone is now rolled away. And he peeks in, and what does he see? He sees burial linens just laying there. It wasn't that long ago that he helped take those off of Lazarus. He see the burial cloths. Then Simon Peter came along behind him and went straight into the tomb. It was first one in, I still won. You know. He goes straight in, and he saw the strips of linen lying there, as well as the cloth that had been wrapped around Jesus' head. The cloth was still lying in its place, separate from the linen. I am so glad I wasn't there when Lazarus was dying, so that you could see what I want to show you. It is so important for you to see how this thing plays out with Lazarus, so that when you look at another tomb, when the stone is rolled away and you see a bunch of linen laying there, it's going to make a whole lot more sense to you. Miracle 7 to miracle 8. The completion of something and the start of something new. So he looks and he sees everything laying from where it sheds. Finally, the other disciple who had reached the tomb first. Okay, we get it. You were faster. You got to write it in again? In case they missed it, I was the one who was there first. Also went inside. He saw and he believed. He saw and he believed. That's why he wanted to show us Lazarus. That's what he did. When he spoke life into death and hope into hopelessness and light into darkness with Lazarus, he was completing something. He was preparing us to look at this tomb. He looked inside and he believed. They still didn't understand from Scripture that Jesus had to rise from the dead. I still don't understand that this was like a part of the thing, but I can't deny, I don't believe he's here. Then the disciples went back to where they were staying. Now Mary stood outside the tomb crying, and as she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb. And what she remembers seeing wasn't just linens. She sees two angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been. And they're just like, what up? One at the head and the other at the foot. And they asked her, woman, why are you crying? Why are you mourning? Why do you feel like there's no hope? Why do you feel like this story is done? Who told you that this story is done? They've taken my Lord away, she said. I don't know where they put him. At this, she turned around and she sees someone. Now it says she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she didn't realize that it was Jesus. Instead, she turns around and sees someone. In the beginning was the Word. The Logos, the eternal, the infinite, the formless, the one that existed before everything else, the one who is the divine imagination and inspiration for everything that was created. And what does he create? A garden. She turns and sees Jesus standing there, but didn't realize that it was Jesus. Something is so new and so different that this man asks her, woman, why are you crying? Who are you looking for? And thinking he was the gardener. Yeah, this new resurrected Logos, this new resurrected God, just walking around like a gardener, planting something new. Sir, if you've carried him away, just tell me where you've put him and I'll get him. And Jesus says to her, Mary. She turned toward him and cries out in Aramaic, Rabboni, teacher, it's you. You're back. You're new. Jesus said, don't hold on to me. It's not, don't try to keep me here. I've yet to ascend to the Father. Go instead to my brothers and tell them that I'm ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and to your God. We're starting something new, Mary. We're starting something new. We're creating something new. There's life and death. There's hope and hopelessness. There's light in the darkness. We're doing something new, Mary. That was miracle 7. This is miracle 8. That period is done. We're now going into a new period. A new sense of life, a new sense of creation, a new week, a new beginning, a new creation sequence. We're starting something new. Go and tell everyone. Mary Magdalene went to the disciples with the news that I have seen the Lord. As she told them that he had said these things to her, I'm doing something new. If how you begin a story and how you end a story are important, we could go all the way back to Genesis. Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In Hebrew, it's Breshit bara Elohim. Before there was anything, God made something out of nothing. When King David prays his beautiful prayer in the Psalms, God created me a clean heart. He uses the same Hebrew word. Make something out of nothing. And when he heals Lazarus, John is telling us he just completed something. Something is just completed. And the next time they stood in front of a tomb with a rolled open stone, it wasn't just a formula for how to raise the dead. Personally, and maybe I don't have enough faith as I should, I don't think we're supposed to walk out of here and start going to every cemetery and start calling out names. I'm not sure that this was meant to be some formula or equation for how to bring the dead back. I think Jesus is speaking life into one situation and showing us that even in hopelessness, there can be hope. In darkness, there can be light. And in death, there can be life. And I think he wanted his disciples to see that. So the next time they looked at an empty grave filled with linen, it would make sense. Something has been completed and something new is starting. And some of us need to hear that. Some of us need to hear that. God can speak into the darkest of places and bring something beautiful out of it. God can speak into the most hopeless of situations in a marriage and still can bring something out of it. God can speak into the most terrible of situations, and even if it doesn't go the way that we think it should, he can still create something new and beautiful out of it. So how do we walk that out? I mean, what do we do with that? Maybe for you, you're holding on to a dream or a relationship, a situation or a circumstance. I'm not here to try to tell you if you do X, Y, and Z, then everything's going to go the way that you want. That's not it. Instead, I want to give us some tips for how we can still look at the Lord and have hope even when things don't go the way that we want, that he is still in the process of creating something good and beautiful out of your situation. So how do we do it? Real quickly, I put down 4 things. 1, how do I live out something new? Be honest with how things are. In other words, Jesus saying, Lazarus is dead. So many of us may not find the healing or walking out in the new thing that God is doing in our lives because we just don't want to be honest with how things are. It's really hard to move forward with repairing a marriage if I'm never willing to say there's something wrong with my marriage. It's really hard to move forward and find healing in the midst of addiction if I can't say, yeah, I have a problem. It's really hard to move forward with an area of weakness in my life if I can't say that there's something wrong. If I just go into self-defense mechanisms or I numb it and I just say nothing's wrong, everything's fine, or it's always someone else's fault, I am never going to walk out the healing of something new that the Lord is bringing me into. Sometimes we just have to be honest. Jesus is honest. At first he's like, yeah, Lazarus is asleep. Well, if he's just asleep, let him sleep. Okay, here's the thing. He's dead. Okay? He's dead. Start there. He's dead. I'm not trying to have us walk around, my marriage is dead. No, I'm trying to get us to the point where we can say, okay, man, there's some stuff we need to work on. I don't want to deny it anymore. There's just stuff in my heart I need to deal with. I can't just deny it, and I definitely can't just push the blame off to someone else. If I want to walk out in something new, I need to be honest with how things are. Lazarus is dead. There's nothing really miraculous about Lazarus coming out of the tomb if he wasn't dead in there in the first place. Instead, it's like the most dangerous game of hide and seek you could ever play. So what if no one looked there? You know? It's miraculous because he's dead. Number 2, ask yourself this. Be honest with where you are, and then ask yourself, am I willing to move forward? Lazarus, come out. Lazarus, come out. Am I willing to actually move forward? What if Lazarus, stone opens, this divine voice of God says, Lazarus, come out, and he's like, thanks, but I'm good. Actually, it's been 4 days. I'm kind of accustomed to it. I have new routines in here. I'm all right. Yeah. It's one thing to say that there's an issue in my life that needs to get worked on. There's an issue in my relationship that needs to work on. There's an issue in addiction that needs to work on. There's an issue in something. I can say that, but then the next question is, am I actually willing to move forward in it? Jesus is the one that brings Lazarus back from the dead, but Lazarus is the one that walks out. You know what I'm saying? Jesus wasn't like, Lazarus, come back to life, then does like a fireman carry and forces him out of the tomb. He doesn't do that. It says, Lazarus, come out. It's on you. Come out. Jesus brings the healing. So often I think in our lives, Jesus brings healing, brings opportunity for healings, brings communities for healing, but it's got to be me that says, okay, I'm going to walk forward in this. I'm going to move forward in this. I'm going to grab my spouse by the hand and say, I have messed up more times than I care to admit, but if you're with me, I'm with you, and we're going to move forward. That's different than saying this is all your fault and you started this and this is really. We're going to get through this. We're going to walk out of this tomb. We're going to keep going. See what I'm saying? It's different. Number 3, declutter and let go. Take off the grave clothes. Lazarus, wake up. Okay. Lazarus, come forward. Okay. Now take off his grave clothes. Whoa, time out. I've gotten kind of accustomed to these grave clothes. It's kind of my identity. It's my thing. I'm the dead guy. So that's who I am. So I'm the dead dude. If you take that away, who am I? If you take away my brokenness, who am I? If you take away my pain, my hurting, who am I? Oh, the day that we get way too comfortable with just being, yeah, my marriage is terrible. So, kind of who I am. Just how it is. Kind of come accustomed to it. Yeah, my life is terrible. Yeah, I don't really have an identity. Yeah, it's just how it is. So I'm just going to kind of become a little accustomed to this. How am I supposed to walk in what God has called me to do as a new thing if I can't start to take off and let go of the old stuff? Finally, this, trust the hope and live forward. I can't imagine Lazarus going to bed the next night. Okay, that's cool. I got another day. Am I going to wake up tomorrow? Nowhere does it say that Lazarus has kept on living forever. He probably died again. Yeah? Ever thought about that? Yeah. Unless he's alive somewhere right now and has been for the last 2,000 years. Lazarus died again, you know? But you live on, and you keep moving forward with hope, and you declutter, and you let go of the thing that said that I'm just the broken one, or I'm just the hurting one, or I'm just that's who I was, but Jesus just called me out of the grave. I don't understand his empty grave if I can't understand this empty grave, but now that I've seen 2 empty graves, God darn it, I'm going to walk out of my own empty grave. I'm going to have Josh come out. What is it for you? A dream, a relationship, a circumstance, a conflict, a financial situation, a work situation. This isn't how I thought life was going to go. It seems like everything in my life is just one foot in the grave, and maybe I can admit it, or maybe I just blame everyone else for it. Maybe I don't want to recognize that Lazarus is dead. Maybe I don't want to recognize that there's an issue. Don't miss out on the opportunity of Jesus speaking in to the grave of that area of your life and saying, come out. I'm doing something new. Something is dead. Something is done. Something's been completed and fulfilled. I'm doing something new in your life now. Would you stand? Just pray. You want to play some? You want to play some? We're just having a council up here. You want to, or do you? Yeah, just cover it. Josh is going to lead us into a song as we end here. Take that thing before the Lord. If you're here as a part of our prayer teams, you can come forward. If you just want someone to process with, someone to cry with, someone to say, like, yeah, that's me. I've lost a whole lot of hope recently. Come forward, just meet with us. We're not scary. We're just going to listen to you. Don't miss out on an opportunity for God to call something new out of something old, to bring hope into hopelessness, life into death, light into darkness.